Welcome. I'm joined today, everybody, by Polly Williamson, who in her early life was an equestrian champion, an incredible equestrian champion, and you rode for Great Britain, got 6 golds, and then when, after a few years, 20 years on in fact, was it 20 years on?
Gosh, yes, it is, almost, yeah.
You went through a traumatic brain injury after having an accident with a horse. And after that day, you have been fighting for those first years to recover, both mentally and physically, and get back to your former life.
Yes.
I'm so honoured that you've come here today to talk to us, so thank you so much.
Thank you, it's great.
Fantastic. So let's start at the beginning. So one thing from the book, so you've written this fantastic book, Where Did I Go?, which explains your whole journey from before and after the accident and everything that you went through. There's a particular explanation of you, which is fantastic, which I'm kind of obsessed with. So your GP came up with it first of all, and it's like the most descriptive and probably the most accurate explanation of you. What is that explanation and how do you relate to it?
My doctor, my GP, described me in 2 phases, to be fair, but he described me as a bloody-minded pain in the ass. And my husband might agree. He said, actually, you continue to be a pain in the ass, because I said that I was quite a pain in the neck in my recovery, asking all my therapists, physiotherapists, speech and language therapist, for new exercises, asking them to push me a bit harder, and saying to them, come on, I need some more exercises, give me some more ideas. And my GP said, you continue to be a pain in the arse, it's got you where you are. And then he called me bloody-minded. Actually, it was a year later, or a bit less than a year later, and I completed the Bath half marathon, which, bearing in mind my balance is not great, so I'd struggle to really run. My doctor happened to be at the Bath half marathon because his son was one of the more professional runners. And he said, only your bloody mindedness got you through the finish. So I often joke with him that he called me a bloody minded pain in the ass. And as many people have said, A, yes I am, and B, it got me where I am. Yeah,
it is a damn good quality to have when you're fighting for your life, first of all, and then you're fighting to have a life that you're wanting, to get back to your former life and to, have that relationship with your boys again, where you're almost your former self, so that you can be their mummy again. How incredible. So let's go on to talk about your fabulous golds. So in your early life, was it in 87 when you were 18 you won a scholarship, an equestrian scholarship, and then you went on to compete with your horse Bumble, who was, from the sounds of it, just the most incredible horse that you had an incredible connection with.
Yes, I certainly had an amazing connection with him. My parents bought him when I was 15, so I was very young. My trainer at the time didn't think that he was particularly talented. She thought he was very steady, very nice, but not so naturally talented. But Bumble had the most incredible temperament, and that is such a leading quality in horses, competition horses, but also in people, of course. And his temperament was so generous and giving and genuine, and he just tried and tried for me. And so yes, we were awarded a scholarship to train here in Gloucestershire, and so I moved from North Wales to Gloucestershire and began training with a very well-known couple, Michael and Angela Tucker, and was selected for the junior British team to compete in the Junior European Championships in Rome, the south of Rome.
Beautiful to be in Rome as well.
I know, yeah, it was great actually. Yes, it was great. I do remember going around Rome and a few times, but the competition was amazing. It was up in the hills just outside Rome, and I can remember. Obviously, it was a very long time ago. I can remember bits of the competition, but I can't remember. I closed my mind so much to competing and concentrating solely on the job in hand that I can't remember any of the significant moments like the prize giving. I can't remember all of that, the raising of the British flag when we won and the playing of the national anthem. It is just a blank.
Right.
Not a blank, but I definitely completely focused my mind on competing and doing the best I could.
Yes.
That I closed my mind to everything all around me.
Once you'd already won, it was like, oh, okay, I've done my job today.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I was just so focused. It took a while for the outside world to come in.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was just you and Bumble for that time doing.
Absolutely, exactly right.
And like your relationship sort of brought you that.
Yeah.
And as I said in the beginning, you won 6 gold medals in total, which I think that is, your bloody minded pain in the ass has probably got a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure it has,
Have you always been a determined kind of person, ambitious person?
Certainly determination runs in my family. My sister's very determined. And I certainly was pretty awkward as a child and didn't conform, was rebellious at school, naughty at school, loved buying tricks that I could play on all my teachers. So I was a pain in the neck.
I think you describe yourself as horrid Henry.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah, no, for sure. I was the teacher's nightmare. Oh, no. I was never horribly naughty. Never did anything outrageous. I was just the mischievous one.
Yes.
Playing tricks and chatting and gossiping away in school and throwing things across the classroom, and I used to let off stink bombs.
Oh my god, that's so naughty, I love it.
I know, I remember doing that in the physics laboratory. The physics teacher was, I'm sure he's an extremely nice chap, but I was so naughty.
So that spirit has carried you through.
Yes, for sure it has. Yeah, and it certainly, that spirit needed directing, and my career definitely, I was single-minded, and that spirit was directed towards competing and being successful, and that spirit has led me through life always.
Through everything, because you can also add esteemed business person to your,
Well, I'm not sure about that, but
It's pretty impressive. At 23, you owned a business which was taking care and training horses. Charlton Park, was it?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And you kept that for 20 years.
Yes,
as well.
Exactly. Well, until my accident. Yes, no. I was 23, and my parents quite rightly said it's time for you to become independent. And the opportunity to run an equestrian business at Charlton Park came up. So I took it on. I was lucky to have sponsorship for my competition horses from a transport company, TNT. And then I just started the business, and I had some wonderful clients of horses who owned horses, sent to me to compete or produce and train and sell. And I started teaching a little bit, and at 23, I can't believe it, but I started the business.
Gosh. Did you always know you kind of had that in you, that kind of business-minded?
No.
Or did you learn as you went?
No, I definitely learned as I went, yeah. I mean, it came more out of sheer necessity. Mm-hmm. I was unqualified to do anything. I left school at 13. Mm. My last academic exam was at 15. Mm. I never sat another academic exam in my life. So unqualified to do anything, but was qualified to build an equestrian business, and I was qualified by having had some success.
Exactly. And then you met your boyfriend then, that's now gone on to become your husband, Toby, and you had 2 beautiful boys, Freddie and Jack. Yes. And I remember there's a little passage in your book where you sort of say, as you were riding, you were careful because you had the boys to think of, and you perhaps wouldn't choose to ride horses which you weren't sure about their temperament, you didn't have too much. There was a little bit of a of a rogue aspect maybe there. But yeah, unfortunately in December 2011, was it?
Yes.
You had your accident.
Yes.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about what happened that day?
For sure. Well, everything I tell you is hearsay because obviously I can't remember a thing.
Right, yes.
I do remember when you're talking about not wanting to ride horses that I felt were more risky. I do remember the morning I went to a competition, a local competition, and a horse that I had sent back because I didn't trust the horse's temperament. And I felt that possibly the horse was a little bit unsafe for me to ride. So I sent it back to the owner. And at this competition, when I went in the morning, the horse was competing with its new jockey. And the new jockey had previously won badminton, so he was a very senior international jockey. And I remember thinking, have I done the right thing? Should I have persevered with this horse? And I immediately answered myself and saying, yes, I have a responsibility to my children. I did the right thing sending the horse back. 2 hours later, or however long, I was kicked in the head by a horse I did trust and was happy to train. Freak accident, got kicked in the head.
I think the horse just got spooked. And
yes,
yeah,
he got spooked. He was messing around a little bit, but that's horses. He was unlucky. We were unlucky. He slipped and fell over, and then he got completely spooked and panicked. And when getting up from the floor, he was kicking out wildly and caught me smack in the head. Because a younger student was riding with me at the time, so she saw it.
And then she raised the alarm and got you the help you needed.
Yes.
And then you were rushed straight to, was it Biru you were?
No, well, French Hospital, which is now closed, I think.
Okay.
In Bristol, which is a head injury hospital. So I was rushed there, and I was on site. So at Charlton Park, they intubated me. So in other words, tried to keep me alive. And then I was rushed to hospital, and my husband was telephoned, and he followed.
Wow.
I know my willful, determined fighting streak came to the fore these last few years. We all have it in us somewhere. We just need to seek it out, find it, and use it.
Yes.
I think that one. I have to say, even I'm like when I read after a couple of years, after it's been out a couple of years. And I, for whatever reason, reread that, and I was thinking, that's quite a good paragraph, Polly.
Well done. That's descriptive, emotive, and it we really do all have to find that it is so important for us to that fighting spirit. So you were rushed to the hospital, and the day after, you were given 3 possibilities of what might be the outcome. So there was a third of a chance that you would die. There was a third of a chance that you would live, but not particularly be that active mentally.
Well, I'd be disabled.
Okay. And then the last third would be that you would have limited, recovery, but you would be alive, but perhaps not return to your former life.
They described it as a satisfactory recovery.
Satisfactory recovery.
So you take from it what you want.
Wow. And then they didn't give you a fourth, which was what you have now.
Yeah. Living a full life.
Yes.
No, and obviously they have to be cautious because they're talking to my family, my husband and my mother. And those statistics were given 14 hours after the accident.
Okay.
But they still said there was a third of a chance I might not make it.
Yeah.
And no, they didn't give any chance that I would be living a full life. But I am, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh my gosh, definitely.
I was in a coma for 11 days, but then I had amnesia, what they call post-traumatic amnesia, for 2 months. So when I came out of a coma and was transferred to the rehabilitation unit, I can't remember any of that. I have no memory of it at all. I just started to remember little bits about 2 months after my accident.
In your book, your husband, he wrote emails to your loved ones, your friends and family, in regards to what had happened and your progress. Where's my bookmark? Here we go. Would you mind if I just read a couple of passages from it? So yeah, this was by Toby, Polly's husband. So, on day 1, the doctors told me that if Polly survived, we should anticipate 3 weeks of intensive care and 3 to 6 months of rehabilitation, possibly longer. They also told me that for this type of deep-seated injury, the focus will be on her cognitive capacity with the passage of time. Well, so far they've been pretty accurate. And this is when you were no longer a high dependent. And he then recounts, or actually this was the week before, Polly remembers who her husband is. At least this is what the physio tells me, who, having fitted the speaking device that can sit in front of the tracheotomy tube, that she obtained the right response the first time asking. So that was definitely a big win to begin with. And she also knows the children, which is fantastic. So, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how Toby felt in these first few days, and your boys and all your friends and family, everyone rooting for you, wishing that you but no one knew what you were going to wake up and remember and be like.
When Toby writes it, my husband Toby writes those emails, and I apparently remembered who my husband was with the speaking device. I don't remember that. So, I mean, that's complete blank to me.
Right.
Total blank. The first time I was asked how many children I have, I answered 4. In fact, I've got 2. So I'm not quite sure where the other 2 came from.
You love them enough for 4, but...
and yeah, I was just completely confused. I didn't know where I was.
Yeah.
Luckily, I knew who my husband was, but that was good.
When was your first blinks of things that you do remember and that you can remember now? Sort of, what's your first memory from after it that's yours, not given to you?
My first memory, and I can still see it and it would have been a week or 2 or 3, 2 or 3 weeks before I officially came out of amnesia. But I can still see it. I was I was lying in a bed, and there was a bed opposite me, which had screens around it, and I remember thinking, "Gosh, I hope they're okay." And I don't know. I must have been aware of how serious the situation was, because, when you're in hospital, quite often a bed might have a screen around it because they're changing or whatever, or having medicine or whatever. But yes, my first thought was, I hope they're okay. So whether I realised at that time that the situation I was in was pretty serious, I don't know. And that was thinking about, because it was when I was at the rehabilitation place. So it would have been about 5 weeks after the accident, and that would have been my first memory.
Your first glimpse of a memory. Wow. Yeah. And it was really interesting the way you describe it in the book. So to begin with, and for a time after, the thing that was difficult for you, or impossible at the start, was emotion. You couldn't sort of feel anything inside, process it, have any awareness of anybody else's. It was just whatever you were doing on that task on that day was all you had mental.
Yeah. I didn't have enough ability to think beyond what I was doing at that second. Yeah. I couldn't take on any outside emotions, any outside feelings. I couldn't even take on my own feelings. All I could think about was moving one foot in front of the other.
Wow. Just being totally present at that time took all of your energy, all of your strength.
Exactly right, yeah.
Wow. And obviously that's changed vastly over time, but not too quickly. In fact, it took you a long time.
Yeah, it did take a long time.
There's a beautiful incident in which, I don't know how long it is afterwards, I think it's 2 years or so, when Freddie won an art competition, which was the most gorgeous thing. He was selected out of, I think, 100 or something people, 100 kids, and then you went along and he'd actually won first prize. And you were just, as any parent would be, filled with joy and pride, and you're like, oh, okay, this is...
Yeah, I actually felt it and I was aware of it. Whereas if anything happened before that was joyous or meant something to me, I just couldn't absorb it.
Right.
I would have forgotten about it a minute or two later, and I internally couldn't feel that joy.
Yeah.
I might express the joy, but I would have this. I would suddenly burst into fits of giggles, or I would have tears streaming down my face, but I'd have no connection with the emotion. So in other words, I would be giggling, but I wouldn't feel happy, or I'd be crying, but I wouldn't feel sad. It was just physical acts, but with no internal connection.
That's so interesting that could happen.
It was just extraordinary. And when Freddie won that art competition, I had this internal feeling of joy. It was there, I felt it, I was aware of it. I was like, brilliant, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I was so happy for him. And I could feel it, I was aware of it, rather than it was just happening and I'd be laughing or whatever, but just happening and I'd forgotten about it 2 minutes later. I could feel it, and I remember it to this day.
That deep love for your children is what I think maybe reignited that in you.
Yeah, it did, and it was like any mother, it was always there.
Yes.
And definitely it led my road to recovery, definitely.
Oh, beautiful. What a lovely experience. And so early on as well, you went back to school. So this was when you were in the burial unit, and you describe it in the book like, right, it's school time, I've got my lessons, and you literally had these wonderful staff, you know, led you through all of these different exercises, whether they'd be memory ones, whether they'd be facial exercises, because at first after you had the accident, your entire, left-hand side of your face?
Was drooping.
Yeah.
The photograph, which is in my book, is actually taken 2 months after the accident.
Right.
So it's obviously it's better than it would have been originally. And I remember when I was at the rehabilitation unit, it's called Biru. We all had, it's run through the NHS, it's an amazing place, but we all had our own private rooms with a small, not really a bathroom, but a sink and a loo. And I remember glancing in the mirror above the sink and noticing my face was drooping and my eye was closed. As somebody described it as stroke face, because my injury is similar to having a stroke. And I can still see, I remember looking at this face and just not looking again in the mirror. And I didn't look fully in the mirror for about another year, 18 months. So whenever I would do some makeup or whatever, it would just be apply it but never look, if that's possible.
Okay.
Just apply it but just don't look. And I just remember about 18 months, if not 2 years after the accident, I suddenly looked in the mirror and I was like, that's the first time I really looked in the mirror.
What was the reason that you didn't?
I just think it was subconscious, didn't want to look.
Was it sort of coming to terms with how you may look in the future, or of what it's done to you?
I suspect it's maybe having lost the identity. I definitely lost my identity, so maybe I didn't know who I was, so therefore I didn't want to look in the mirror because I didn't know them anyway.
Right.
I don't know.
It makes total sense.
I knew I hadn't looked in the mirror not properly, for 18 months, maybe even 2 years. But I've never really thought about why I didn't. And I guess talking to you and you asking me a few questions, I'm thinking, I guess probably that's because I lost my identity, therefore I didn't want to look at this new person because I had no connection with her.
Didn't recognise them. There's an interesting passage in your book where you do recount that I don't recognise this person that is, appearing and functioning every day. They're different than Polly.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you actually tried to cope with it was to say, well, I'm going to be this new person then.
Yes,
Call me Jane.
Yes.
And you even worked out a new fashion sense for Jane. Yeah. You were going to be long, flowery skirts.
Very different to what I normally wear.
So How far did you go with Jane? And sort of, I mean, if it's the right way to phrase it, like, did she help you get, towards?
No, she didn't. I certainly used to yell at my husband when I was having a complete blank out. Polly is no more. Call me Jane. That's my new name. That's my name. But I definitely chose the name Jane because it's simple and easy. Mm-hmm. It's just straightforward. It's easy to spell, easy to remember, short name. The reason I'm absolutely sure the reason I never took it further is because of my children. Because they obviously call me Mum, but they know my name's Polly. So, and that would be undoubtedly why. But when I was giving a presentation to the charity Headway. It was at the national conference in Staffordshire. I talk a little bit about wanting to change my name, and then at the end, a chap came up to me and said that he had survived a TBI, traumatic brain injury, and that he had changed his name by deed poll, but I never understood why he did it. And the loss of identity is pretty huge. I came across a poem written by another TBI survivor called Joseph McAloon, and one line reads, "I can't find Joseph. Tell me, where did he go?" And I couldn't believe it because I read that and it was about 3 or 4 years after my book was published. And of course my book is called Where Did I Go? Yeah. And he had written, where did he go? So the loss of identity is huge. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it obviously does happen to many.
It is common when you have a brain injury.
Yes.
Is it helpful when you speak to other people with brain injuries and you sort of, did you feel that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not so much now, although I would always be open to anybody who approached me and wanted some advice or just to chat. But through a friend, I was introduced via email, first of all, to somebody, Ben Owen Jones he's called, and he is an actor, and he had a brain injury when he was much younger. And certainly emailing him, he was amazing, he was brilliant. So he used to reply to my emails within an hour. And I guess probably it was easier for me because it's somebody I'd never met. So you were able to offload. And he was so generous because he never questioned wishing to reply. He just replied.
That's really generous and lovely. I suppose when you've been through something similar, it's
there's
like
a connection.
I know how that feels. I'm going to make sure that this person feels heard and supported.
Yeah.
So another part of your recovery stages, which must have been so difficult as well, and it's often reported amongst other people with traumatic brain injuries as well, that within the family unit there's often, I don't want to say fights, but there's difficulty as you're regaining parts of yourself and learning to live with new parts of yourself, and also different aspects of personality coming out more often. So you were sort of more angry more often early on.
Yes, I was more angry suddenly, and I didn't have any control over my emotions. So my childhood temper, which obviously I'd learned to control, used to come out straight away.
Right.
And explosions of fury. There's certainly quite a few plates I broke, I think.
The crockery did not fare well.
The crockery didn't fare so well. But because you have no control.
Yeah.
You don't have that same control that we have. You're like a child. Not only would I cry very easily, I would giggle very easily, but I would lose my temper very easily. So you're like a child, but slightly more unamusing when you're grown up, but you're acting like a child. My husband was superb and supported me through all of that and never wavered off the line. He very much stayed a huge stability. He was in the Royal Navy for many years and was still serving in the Royal Navy when I had my accident. And undoubtedly his training as an officer would have given him a grounding to support somebody through trauma. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, he seems to be your rock throughout all of this, who is, you know, as you were refinding yourself and learning, you know, how to redo everything in life. Because there was also your boys who were so young.
I know.
Bless them. And that must have been so strange for them to begin with, because it's like, this is mummy, but she's acting different. And, you know, and I wanted to touch on as well, because there's this beautiful theme throughout your book as your motivation, your why is those boys, and your love for them at different points is like, you would identify something within your behaviour or something you felt was lacking or something you needed to improve in to be able to take care of them on your own, to be able to... And that was your entire motivation. Was it sort of your centre of gravity?
Yes, it was. And when I'm talking about the silly bursting into fits of giggles, you know, when you're a mum with kids and they do something funny, the one thing that was not very conducive was bursting into fits of giggles, you know, if they'd done something slightly not naughty, but something that needed sort of a little bit more discipline. Discipline is quite a strong word, but you know what I mean. And I would just find it funny, and I would dissolve these fits of giggles, and I was like, how can my children have some respect for their mother who just dissolves into these uncontrollable fits of giggles? So I found a way of controlling them, and in my mind, being somebody who's fairly straightforward, I would like, okay, apply pain, because that will stop giggles. So every time I felt a surge of giggles coming on, I would just bite my lip very hard. And I just bit it so hard that I would absolutely stop giggling. I did have quite a sore lip a few times, but c'est la vie, you know. It worked. And so yes, the love of my children was undoubtedly my reason for trying to recover quickly. But I also knew that they needed some stability and some boundaries, I guess. But they definitely needed some stability, and having a mother who would instantly dissolve into fits of giggles or tears streaming down the cheeks was just a no-no.
Definitely. As I say, it must be confusing, because you know that mummy has an injury in some way and that's changed her, but like, for her to react so differently to things, that must have been,
Yeah, and they were very young. I mean, Jack was only 2 when I had my accident, 2.5, and Freddie was just 6. So they were very young. And Freddie now, he remembers it a little bit, but my family were absolutely did the right thing. They were very definitely, you know, mum is in hospital. They never told him how serious it was, and it wasn't until he read my book, in fact, that he discovered that it was pretty touch and go. And Jack was 2, so I can't remember anything when I was 2.
Yeah. I think first memories are sort of 3, 4 at the very earliest. Fair enough. So moving forward with your journey, so I think it was at the summer party that you threw to thank everybody.
Yes.
Was it there that somebody suggested that you take on a new challenge?
Actually, not quite.
Okay.
I had finally emailed Biru, the rehabilitation unit, to say thank you.
Yes.
And gosh, it was a while later, a good year later, I suspect. And Claire Belmont, who had been my physio at Biru, emailed back to say, lovely to receive your email. You had mentioned about running a marathon. We're running the Bath Half Marathon. Would you like to join the team? And so I decided I would, and I told everybody at our summer party. That's where I really sort of told everybody that this is what I was going to do, and trying to raise some money for the rehabilitation units. The idea came from Lee Ordis, who had been a rugby union player, and Lee had a car crash and had been at Beirut for many, many months, and came up with the idea of running the Bath Half Marathon in aid of the rehabilitation unit. So I joined the team.
Amazing.
And set about training.
Oh my goodness, because I mean, in these early stages, we've not touched on it too much, but it affected you very, very much physically as well. So you had to really learn to walk, basically.
Yeah, no, I can't remember relearning to walk. I mean, I can't remember the first bit anyway. I have just a very, very flicker of a memory of being in this sort of almost like a machine, and you are tied to a walking machine, and your back is completely supported. I think your arms, I can't remember, and walking along. And then I have another vague memory of walking with the frame, and I had a belt around my waist and a nurse or a physio behind me with their fingers looped through the back of my back, through the belt at my back, so that I couldn't fall over. If I went to go down, they could pull me up.
Right, yeah.
I sort of vaguely remember. But when my memory started to come back, I was already walking, but only walking with, they called it a tripod stick. So rather than a walking stick, you had this static stick which had 3 points.
You went from literally that to running, on training to run a half marathon.
Yes, I did. Because you have to keep on moving forward, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Was this like your way in that time of like, this is your next challenge? Because it seems as though you're going from challenge to challenge in your life, and that sort of, that goal then motivates you. When you've got it, you're like, great, what's the next one? Kind of thing.
No, definitely. I now realise, having done quite a few presentations in the last year or two, that I definitely was slightly running away from dealing with the emotional trauma, and would constantly have these challenges. The first one was regaining my driving licence, and I worked very hard to regain my driving licence, got that. The next one was running the Bath Half Marathon, and the training, you know, I was so disciplined actually about doing the training. I had write in my diary, every third day run, and I absolutely, it could be pouring with rain and there was not a day I would miss out unless there was snow on the road.
Yeah, oh, that's incredible. I mean, it's that thing again of, if you've got the discipline, because you've already got that determination, that's a given in your character and sort of how you use your energy. But if it's funneled into this one thing, it's like there's nothing you can't accomplish. So why not the Bath Half?
Self-discipline, I have to say, was definitely the way forward, because when I came home from hospital, I was given this list of exercises to do, and then I would go to the outpatient care in Gloucester Hospital, and they would give me, the speech and language would give me these sentences to repeat the whole time. The physio would give me exercises to practice at home, and you had to be self-disciplined about doing it, because otherwise I wouldn't get better.
Definitely. How did that feel on the day as you were approaching the line, you're going to start? What were the thoughts in your mind?
I remember being at the start, and there was just these thousands of people all around me, other runners, milling around us. And when we set off, obviously we had a lot of people around. I was running with a team, my wonderful trainer, running trainer, Ollie Wakefield, who was superb, and then three from Beirut were running with me too. I was really worried about the other people because I was so aware of my balance or lack of balance, but the team that I ran with completely surrounded me, so they were definitely all around me, so they would protect me from anybody else.
That's amazing. Did that feel good, running with them as they, you know?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, no, it was good. And the Beirut manager, Alison Woods, she just was great. She just chatted the whole way along and just kept us laughing. Yeah. And actually another good friend, Pete Coote, he ran with me as well.
So you completed it?
Yes.
How much did you raise?
Gosh, just over £5,000.
Oh my gosh, because your target was 3, wasn't it? And you just smashed it.
Yes, it was. I remember, actually, I do remember, because my husband said to me, so how are you going to go about raising some money, And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to raise £3,000. That's my target.
There you go.
And Toby
stick
was
in
like,
the sand.
Exactly. He was literally like a stick in my sand. I was like, plucked a figure out. And Toby said, that's quite a lot of money, Polly. And I was like, nope, £3,000. That's going to be it. And it was £5,000. Yeah.
Nice, because I remember at the summer party, well, I don't remember, I read at the summer party, you were like, I will be collecting from all of you,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes. No, our friends were incredibly generous.
Oh.
Yeah, they really were.
So you smashed that target, and you've touched on as well, which I think is important and very relevant, I think, for a lot of people, that when COVID hit in 2020, we couldn't go out, we couldn't do anything, and there was a void in which, where you had perhaps gone towards outer external challenges to succeed and to fill your time and your energy and your mind, suddenly that wasn't available anymore. How did that affect you?
Not great. I think pre-COVID, whenever I would have more of a psychological difficulty, I would have a burst out, and then it would just pass. I just bury it. I just find another challenge to do. Wrote my book, and then we got a pony for our younger son Jack, and I was like, okay, I'm going to concentrate on that. Whereas when COVID hit, of course, we were all trapped inside, couldn't get out and do things, and I didn't get any peace, headspace. Much as I love my family, they were always all around, the 3 of them. So I had no headspace, and I just struggled a bit to cope. And then I made the decision that I guess I accepted that I needed some emotional trauma, I had emotional trauma that I had needed to deal with. And I Googled a former doctor that I rode horses for when I was very young, 23 or something, called Dr. Robert Sharp, and he's a psychologist. I discovered that he was a world leader in psychology, now semi-retired, but was definitely a world leader. And I contacted him, and he was just amazing. He just replied straight away and helped me.
In what way did he help you?
It was Robert and another psychologist called Stephen Smith, who Robert put me in touch with. Stephen dealt with my demons, if that makes sense, and he gave me tools to use when the demons came knocking.
Okay.
So I have a few strategies that bring me to halt and allow me to stand still for a minute.
Yeah.
And then turn away from the red mist.
Okay.
And those were tools that Stephen definitely gave me to use. Robert made me think more of the future and how to move forwards, more building my confidence.
Yeah.
And one phrase he actually used within an email or something like that, and actually I remember telling my children this one, and he says, I was saying, that when I'm teaching my equestrian training, I would say to pupils, you will often make mistakes, but the key is to learn from them. Mm-hmm. And Robert came back and said, no, you will make mistakes, but winners work them into new tricks. And that is what I'm just, trying to do. I've had my accident. I've got to turn that into a positive, into a new trick.
Yes.
And that's what I have to, I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity.
Yes.
Rather than a downfall that you have to. It can become something that is too painful to process, so you just avoid it and you bury it. It's like, okay, what is here that I can use to then propel forward?
Certainly I buried it. Undoubtedly I buried it. Yeah. And talking to Stephen and Robert, Stephen particularly brought it, this is what's happened, and deal with it. These tools, these strategies, these thinking strategies can help you deal with it. And then Robert is helped me to find some confidence and move forward. So yeah.
What were you building confidence in at those stages?
Trusting my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just didn't trust it, and I still find that quite difficult. It was only last night, because I'm attending a speaking course in Bristol, because I've been doing quite a few presentations for companies, which is, as Robert says, you have a new trick, and my new trick is giving these presentations. So I went to Bristol last night to the speaking course. Now my sense of direction is poor. It always was poor. Now it's just chronic.
This hasn't made it better.
No. And I'm not very good. We live in the country, go into a city. And I got sat nav, I put in the postcode. There's another Bristol Toastmasters set up, and I obviously got onto their postcode rather than one I'm going to, and so I tapped in this postcode. It took me to completely the wrong place. And then I was panicking because I've got to get there. I'm not coming all the way to Bristol without finding it and getting to this course. And immediately I thought, I was like, oh, my stupid brain, why doesn't it work? Why has it picked this up wrong, incorrect? And I definitely reused, I say reused because I haven't used them for a while, the tricks and thinking strategies that Stephen and Robert have taught me, definitely. And dealt with the complete lack of trust in my brain.
Yeah.
And I found the place, and I was only 5 minutes late.
Okay, that's great.
All right.
Exactly. I mean, no, everyone would rather you arrive safely and everything. Fantastic. Do you think that will be something that you always struggle with, trusting your brain?
Yes, because I can't run away from the fact that to put it bluntly, I am brain damaged. I might sound fairly normal, but there are some brain pathways that are dead.
Sure.
So trusting my brain, I do trust it, but I have to convince myself, if that makes sense. So if I have to slightly go through the process of, you're okay, your brain does work, it might take a little while to come to the right conclusion. Sometimes it gets a little bit lost along the way, but it does work. Use the strategies, trust yourself, and you will get there.
What advice would you give somebody who either has had a traumatic brain injury or is going through something life-changing where perhaps they don't trust themselves or can't accept themselves?
Certainly seek advice, seek help, and then get or secure some thinking strategies, some tools that help you. Write them down and work with them. I have written down saved on my mobile phone a great, not mass, but quite a few key sentences that I got from Robert and Stephen, and they're there on my phone. And whenever I am doubting myself or something's happening, I will take the time to stop, open up those notes and read them.
They remind you, they sort of refocus your confidence and your strategy?
Yeah, they refocus my strategies and refocus my ability to carry on the correct path.
Black and white, and that's your game plan kind of
and
thing.
It's grounding.
Yeah.
Brings you just, rather than you going off, oh my God, help, my brain doesn't work, it's so damaged, it's just a whoa.
Yeah, you just down to this core, this is what's going to work, let's plough on kind of thing.
Whoa.
Bring your duck down to earth.
Go again.
So we've spoken sort of briefly about where you are now, and you're currently sort of engaging as a public speaker and using, what's happened to you, your story, in order to propel you into the future and create an opportunity. And it's also really exciting as well because you've started riding again.
Yes, I have. When I first had my accident, I was just like, I'm not going to ride because the children were terribly young. As I said, they were 2 and 6, and my number one importance was being a mum to them, and so I was just not going to ride him. And then Jack has always, our younger son, has always been mad about horses, just from the day he was born. And finally I sort of relented and said, okay, you can go to the local riding school. And so he went to the local riding school for 18 months, 2 years, and then we got him a pony for Christmas, which actually completely brought back my deep love for the horses. Looking after this pony was just heaven. And that pony was small, so I was never going to really ride the pony. Whatever, in normal circumstances, the pony was too small really for me to ride. And then he outgrew the pony, so we got him another one. This one is actually a little horse, small horse. And I was, I was just like, I should be able to ride this horse. When Jack's at school, I was employing a young girl to keep the pony fit so he could compete the horse. And I was like, for goodness sake, I'm paying somebody to take the horse for a little ride down the road, walk and trot. And also I thought it'd be quite nice if I could train the horse, because the horse was quite young, so it needed training. And I didn't do anything about it for, almost a year. And then actually I was talking to Stephen Smith, the psychologist, and he said, have you ridden again? And I said, no. And he said, what did the doctor say? And I actually asked my husband, and he said it didn't really say anything. And I think the fact that Stephen was direct enough he was the first person who really asked me, why not? Mm-hmm. Toby came up with a very good idea that I should approach the RDA, the Riding for the Disabled Association, which I did, and they were superb, absolutely superb. The watershed department, the watershed Riding for the Disabled near Cirencester, they helped me and they got me back in the saddle, and I started riding again. And began to ride Jack's little horse, Pims, and I really enjoyed it. It's great, and certainly his dressage has definitely improved.
Amazing.
Thanks to a little bit of training from the old bag, in other words, me. I will never jump again. I have no desire to compete again, but helping Jack so that he can ride more successfully, helping Jack so his horse is better trained, helping Jack so his horse is fitter, is great.
Definitely. It's a lovely thing for you to pass on to Jack as well. It's sort of, do you have that bond because you both have that shared love? Sort of, are you like talking horses?
If there is certainly a connection there for sure. It does mean that typical, mother-child, I obviously teach Jack, and a mum teaching their child is bad news from whether it's the piano or whether it's riding or whether it's hockey
driving
or
lessons.
Whatever it
Awful.
is. Awful. But I'm just like, I'm not sending him to somebody else when I'm quite capable of doing it. So it's my job anyway, is teaching. So obviously that adds a bit of stress at times. But yes, it is nice, and it's lovely having the affinity with a horse again. For me, that is very nice. I love looking after the horse.
Yeah. It's this, I've never had a personal relationship with a horse, and whenever I talk to somebody who has and who does, I always feel like I want to.
Yes,
because it
is lovely.
they're almost like they're so intelligent and emotional as well, and you can.
There's such a bond, you know. When I go, his stable is in a big barn, and so you open the door into the barn, and the Pims can't see me and I can't see him because he's just round the corner down the line. But I will call his name, and straight away. So when I get round the corner, having called his name, his head is over the stable door, his ears are pricked, his eyes are bright, and he's saying, "Hello."
You called?
You called. Have you got some food? So the affinity with the horse is very deep. Yes, for sure it is.
That's gorgeous. That must be so lovely to rekindle that for you now.
It is nice. It is nice. I didn't realise how much I missed it.
Yeah. And also Freddie as well. What is he up to these days?
Well, Freddie, believe it or not, is in his first year of A-levels.
Yeah.
And he is very busy at school. He's, dare I say it, a highly intelligent kid. Mums can brag.
So they should.
But he is very definitely geared towards a high university, hopefully high university. He's interested in politics, actually, so he will definitely tell you how the country should be run, whether you agree or not. My idea is right, he says, your idea is wrong. And I said to him, you know, you might have to become a little bit more diplomatic as you become older. But I'm right. He is fully involved with school. He's a bright boy.
So moving forward for you then, what is next for you, and sort of where do you see your life going in these next few years?
I would like to build on my public speaking, keynote speaking. So giving presentations to companies. It's been suggested to me by quite a few people that I should apply for a TED Talk. So that is one area I should look to doing, and I've got a good friend who's going to help me with all that, because the technology side is double Dutch to me. Quite happy at standing up and speaking, but technology, no.
Fair enough.
So I think that will certainly be the way forward, because there is my experiences have taught me that, you know, you can have a severe brain injury, but you still have a good life. And the characteristics that help me to build, to win the medals, have undoubtedly helped me to live a life now. Hard work and, dare I say it, self-discipline.
Yes, hard work, discipline, and that determination to achieve.
Resilience, of course.
Definitely.
So, you know, you can have a traumatic experience in your life, whether it be a brain injury or whether it be something else, but there is always a path forwards.
Whether that path is the same path you expected, or
it's not the path you were on,
but
it's a new path, and there is a path forwards.
Yeah, there's a beautiful phrase that's something like, something that's meant for you will never pass you by.
Yes.
I think that's so gorgeous.
Yes.
Like, you didn't know that this was going to be your life, but
no.
It's a wonderful life all the same, just different.
Yeah, definitely.
So last question, Polly. How much of your former self do you feel you've regained, and how much is anew?
Well, I was always a bloody minded pain in the ass. So
that bit endures.
That bit endures. I think that, you know, at the end of the day, people do change and mature as they become older. And it's 11 years now since my accident. And I'm probably not quite the same person I was. But then, you know, I'm working, I've got 2 children, a dog, a horse, and a husband. And that's going to take its toll.
You got your hands full.
But I think the deep-rooted characteristics are definitely still there, and they've come back.
Your bones are still there.
Yes, I'm probably a little bit changed, I suspect. As I said, you know, people do become a little bit more tolerant. That's possibly middle age for you. As one person said to me, a good friend said to me, "You're actually quite nice now." Or no, she didn't say that actually.
Thank you.
She said, "You're a nicer person nowadays."
Interesting.
Which slightly scares me. Was I really that bad? But I don't think I was. It's just that, you know, I was always busy.
Yeah.
The tolerance and maybe the empathy is better. Maybe that's better.
That is kind of beautiful. I mean, as much as, you know, that was a traumatic event in your life, changed it forever, was awful at the time. If there's something extra you've gained, like, how gorgeous is that? It's like you're making lemonade.
Yes, well, that's exactly it. I'm working on trying to take the positives from my accident.
Definitely.
And that's an ongoing working thing.
Yeah.
But that's definitely what I will always try to do is take the positives from any experience.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful universal message that we can all take, you know. We can always be pessimistic. That is easy for anyone to do. But to be able to look at a situation that isn't the most favourable or flat out something we didn't want and go, okay, this is what we're dealing with here. Where do we go? What can we make?
Yes. Yeah, take the positives.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining me, Polly. I think that's a beautiful point to end on. Do you?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will be following your journey as well as you ride and with your beautiful sons. And
no, they're great.
Thank you for joining me.